Elavazhagan. With me today, we have Mr. Subbiah Elavazhagan from India, and he's going to be our speaker today. So while we are at it, this is going to be more or less like a question and answer session where we ask Mr. Bakul a few questions about coastal flooding and the impact on the aquatic resources, while he gives us his own idea and opinion about whichever question he asks. And please, before we move forward, I would like us to, whosoever has a question, should please put it in the chat box or put it somewhere so that towards the end of the program, we can already have all questions together and we can have answers to them. So a brief bio about our speaker today. Mr. Bakul is from India and is currently on an Erasmus Mundus flood risk management program in Europe. He has a bachelor in civil engineering and he already has a master's degree in coastal management. So the Erasmus program is like a second master's degree in which he's doing. And he has previous experience as a project scientist in National Center for Coastal Research in India, where he has explored his expertise on the field of work. And yeah, his expertise in coastal management has made it, made him like the perfect target for our discussion today. So his research interests are in sea level rise, coastal flooding, and the different impacts on the coastal zones. Welcome, Mr. Bakul. So without further ado, of course, we all know what is going on right now over the world, where we have flooding in different countries, even especially in Nigeria back home. We've had several reports and cases of flooding, and yeah, I'm very sure a lot of people have questions and stuff. But today, we're not going to be focusing on the general flooding. We are going to be focusing on coastal flooding today, because we have different types of flooding, talking about the pluvial flooding. We have the fluvial flooding, we have flash floods, we have coastal flooding, we have various types of flooding. But today we'll be talking about coastal flooding. When I say coastal flooding, of course, everybody know what the coastal area means. So I wouldn't want to say much. I would give room for our speaker today to tell us about this topic today. So our first question would definitely be like this. Mr. Buckle, can you please unmute yourself and please tell us what you know or understand about coastal flooding?
Hi, Babalola. Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, sure. And I think I should, as a slight sorry, maybe my Indian accent might be a little bit difficult to catch for others. So please bother with me. So typically coastal flooding in generally means flooding from the sea into the land. So it is a very straightforward definition. But the coastal flooding is in different forms. So it can be in a static way and in a very dynamic way. So for example, the sea level rise, which is due to the climate change. So it is a very static way of flooding, which means a increase of some 0.5 to 2 meter in the span of next 100 years and or so. So this sea level rise have a sustained long-term impact on the coastal zones and also a very permanent impact on them. And another kind of coastal flooding which is yeah, it is quite dynamic and it is short term. It is mostly due to the tropical cyclones induced storm surges and also tsunamis, which is mostly due to the underwater earthquakes, and also it could be happening in some areas due to landslides. And yeah, this actually the effect of such flooding is quite short term. Maybe it can last some 1 or 2 weeks after the impact of flooding. The system try to recover from it. But the sea level rise, which is a byproduct of climate change, and it has a long-term and permanent impact. And so the impact of this different form of flooding will be different on the coastal of marine or aquatic resources, what we are going to discuss today. Yeah. That is what I need to talk about the coastal flooding today.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Bokul. Thank you so much for that brief introduction into the topic today. As we have all heard from Mr. Bokul, coastal flooding definitely simply means, flooding from the sea into the land. And of course, he made it so brief and like straightforward, telling us about the fact that we can have both static and dynamic coastal flooding. So yeah, talking about the static, talking about sea level rise, there is not so much of movement of water in the ocean. It's just like a rise in the level of the water. And talking about the dynamic in terms of like, of course, we all know static is stable, dynamic is the movement. So talking about the dynamic, talking about tsunamis, that is how, the impact of whatever it is that is happening in the sea, whether static, the impact is the movement, that is the dynamics of coastal flooding is the movement of that water from that particular location in the sea, then into the land. So thank you for that brief introduction about what coastal flooding is. I'm very sure everybody would literally like have like the basic idea of what it is. Moving forward, our next question would be very, very straightforward also and very simple. Mr. Bokul, are you familiar with the different marine aquatic resources that we have in the ocean? If you can share with us some that you think you know.
Yeah, sure. So aquatic resources, in the sense, I can make it as a biological one, because most of the zoological beings are mostly dependent on the existing biological systems like corals or seagrasses or even mangroves or salt marshes. So in this particular discussion, I would more into biological resources, I think, which will um, include the zoological also. So the sense of marine resources, the most important one is coral reef system, and you can find it mostly is in the tropical regions around the world in both southern and northern hemisphere. Yeah, one of the major example is the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, and you can also see in, I think, the Caribbean and even India and most of the tropical regions. And yeah, it is a very rich ecosystem, and it is a very, it gives very huge benefits to the marine life over there. Then there is a seagrass ecosystem, and yeah, this too is also very good for the marine life. And then if you go slightly near to the coast, there are mangroves and salt marshes, and which depend on both the mixing of saline and fresh water. And such systems even give so much benefits to the terrestrial life too. So in the sense that the aquatic resource is getting affected by the coastal flooding, these aquatic resources are the major barrier from the mainland to the mainland from protecting the coastal flooding. So at one hand it enriches the ecosystem, on another hand it protects the coastal flooding, though it gets affected by the coastal flooding, which we will I think we will discuss it further.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Buckle, for that brief explanation about the different aquatic resources we have. As you have heard from Mr. Buckle, we have, when it comes to marine aquatic resources, we can categorize them in different ways in terms of their spatial and temporal locations and stuff. So yeah, we all know generally we have both the flora and the fauna forms of aquatic resources in the ocean. The flora definitely focuses on the plant life, the coral reefs, the aquatic mangroves, like he has said, rightly said, the plants, the aquatic, plant life and everything. And of course, the fauna is talking about the different marine aquatic animals that we have that are distributed geographically in different regions of the world. So these are the basic, marine aquatic resources that are present in the ocean. But yeah, to go deep into why we are here today, the major impact of this coastal flooding to the aquatic resources we have in the water. So, Mr. Buckle, how do you think I know you've been saying you've started already, like, yeah, they can be both positive and negative impacts of coastal flooding to these resources we have. So how do you think this coastal flooding in general affects the survival and the existence of marine aquatic resources? Are there positive impacts? Are there negative impacts? Please share with us.
Yeah, sure. So this coastal flooding, as I said, initially it is in static form and dynamic form. And the static in the sense it is a very slow form of flooding which gradually increases the water level in the sea and subsequently submerge much part of the land. And one of the very simple example I will consider is the coral reef. So this particular uh, sea level rise impact this coral reef in two ways. So one is um, the coral reefs generally grow in the underwater at specific depth, so such that they get the ambient light and they have ambient temperature to survive. So if you know the term coral bleaching, so coral bleaching is the term which indicates the death of corals due to the conditions where they become where they won't survive long. For example, the increase in the temperature. So if you look at the and also even the decrease in some temperature, for example, the sea level rise. So the zone which the corals are existing, it will go further down and they might not get the ambient temperature to survive and they die off. So in the meantime, there are some records which tell that new corals develop in a different zone. So for example, the sea level rise, the water level has changed to a different level. So the new ambient condition has formed in a different level. So the corals tend to grow there. So, but what we look at the current stage of climate change, if you look at it, so it is at a more rapid phase than how the coral can adapt to it. So what we can most hear in the news is more about the coral bleaching than the formation of new corals. Yeah. So, and it is the same in other parts, for example, seagrass ecosystem or some others. One of the major things which affects seagrass ecosystem is again the coastal flooding. It is in the sense when there is a storm, so the terrestrial region get more rainfall and it brings in more flooding again through the rivers into the sea, and with it it brings enormous amount of agricultural, you know, the fertilizers or even the industrial effluents or some nutrients from the terrestrial part into the marine ecosystem, and this induces algal bloom. So algal bloom is a condition, uh, I think if some of you have followed ecology, you might have been familiar with the term eutrophication. So this causes death of marine life underneath it, so that it includes the seagrasses and the other fauna too, both flora and fauna. So this is a quite serious issue. So because we may not be aware of such studies going on, because there are cases it has been recorded and such events are happening, the death of ecosystems due to the flooding. And yeah, uh, so it is what people need to be more aware of. And again, it's the same with the mangroves and salt marshes. The problem with this salt marshes and mangroves are they are the very direct barrier of any form of coastal flooding and coastal erosion, and it protecting the land beneath it. But the problem is most of the land is developed with humans as occupied everywhere, and there are no much spaces for these ecosystems to grow further. And also people are, you know, even occupying the spaces of where mangroves and salt marshes already exist. So in the case of sea level rise, the sea gradually eats away the submerges the mangrove and salt marshes, but these systems don't have much, they cannot adapt to the new equilibrium. In the case, the sea level has rise, but the mangroves cannot push backward because human have occupied those lands. So in this case, it is a serious effect on this, and it ultimately have more impact on coastal flooding. So they are easily destroyed. And another one is this climate change, as projections say, both the storms are intensifying and also very high rainfall intensities, and also very serious storms are expected in the coming years. So I feel this ecosystems are to be the main barrier protecting it, but I think we should work on that, how we need to manage them and so on. So yeah, we need to discuss on that further. I think next will be the discussion on it, how we can reduce their impacts. But if you see the impact of the coastal flooding, so they have both impacts, and I would say the negative impacts trump the positive impacts, and that is my point view.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bokul. Yeah, as we have heard from Mr. Bokul, one take-home message is that whatsoever the negative impact of coastal flooding is definitely more than the positive impact of coastal flooding on the aquatic resources. Looking at the different impacts, talking about the impact of sea level rise, for example, how it can affect the resources that we think we have in the marine life. And we are talking about the fact that so many things as a result of climate change, coastal flooding and stuff, it has resulted in a lot of, coral bleaching, increase in temperature in the ocean, different loss of, habitats for different mangroves as a result of sea level rise, as a result of so many surges of water and storms from the ocean, the introduction of different nutrients from the land after flooding back into the ocean, leading to eutrophication, leading to algal bloom, and all these things. These are like negative impacts of coastal flooding into the marine ecosystem, and thereby these things directly or even indirectly impact the resources we have in the ocean. In addition to this, one other thing or one other negative impact in terms of fauna, in terms of the animals in the ocean, this same coastal flooding can also lead to displacement of a lot of species of animals, species of fishes, species of aquatic resources we have in the ocean. For example, having a tsunami situation or a surge or like coastal flooding where a fish that is naturally, surviving well in a particular water body being taken to another different water body where it probably has to adapt or even probably end up dying. This is another negative impact of coastal flooding because these species are being moved involuntarily from their permanent or natural location to another location. This is another negative impact of coastal flooding that it can have on the aquatic resources. Thank you so much, Mr. Bokul, for your explanation. I'm very sure a lot of people already can already tell the different impact of coastal flooding on the aquatic resources we have. And to finally cap this up, we have one more question for you, Mr. Bokul. After looking into this impact of coastal flooding on the aquatic resources, what measures do you think we can take or can be taken to reduce because since you said, okay, the negative impacts are actually more than the positive impact of this particular coastal flooding, what measures do you think can be taken to reduce this negative impact on our aquatic resources?
Yeah, sure. So ultimately, whatever measures, it should be ultimately come from us. So before we do any measures, we should know what actually is in the system. So we should know what are the resources we have, and we should clearly try to know about, understand their functions, and we should understand what are our needs, because uh, because our needs tend to create some disturbances to the existing system. That's what it's ultimately down to our needs. So we need to manage our needs. We need to try to understand the ecosystem functions, and we should try to, you know, manage our needs without affecting them. So there are some things which are going very important. We need to clearly demarcate the boundaries. So in the sense that, so this particular region is for this use and this is for this use. So the another use should not interfere in this particular function. For example, uh, if you can say there is a particular industry and there is a coral reef system nearby, the the measure should be more about how to manage the things within the industries, and not about how to process the pollutants before releasing them into the ecosystem. So one such thing is marine spatial planning. So marine spatial planning is the way to demarcate the different uses in the marine system. So it is just a very simple mapping, but it will give a very good guidance to the managers to plan any future developments based on it. And I think some, and also another one is how we need to manage our both uh, river and coastal environments. And most of the coastal systems are getting seriously uh, diminished, mostly due from the pollutants and sedimentation from the rivers, rather than the short-term impacts from the sea. So whatever the impacts marine ecosystem faces are ultimately it is from the rivers, most of the things. So yeah, we should have a, a plan. I don't think many countries are working towards this, and even developed countries in Europe are still struggling to do that. And I think few of the projects are going on in terms of that. I think there is one project called West Coast in Europe, and it is a pilot project to protect and recover the marine and coastal ecosystems. And they are doing it. I think if you are interested in such things, you can look at the project website, rescoast.eu. I will send the link in the chat. And they are doing different steps. And if you want to part of the things, I think this particular project will be having a lot of PhD positions. I think some of you might be PhD or you might be interested in there. So yeah, you can contribute it, because every managerial thing should ultimately come from us, and definitely you should contribute to it from your research expertise and from your knowledge. So you can be a part of that. And yeah, it's ultimately how humans plan, and it's ultimately how humans want the ecosystem to be. So we can say we should protect, but we should act. So that is the most important thing. Yeah. So the best thing to do is clearly demarcate the function, each other's functions, and we should not try to affect that system much. Yeah, that's what I need to say about the protection.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Mr. Bokul. As we have heard from Mr. Bokul, the ball is still in our court. Coastal flooding, of course, we all know the effect of climate change generally these days. We've seen it, we've heard it, and we keep hearing it every day. This is something that it still boils down to, artificial, man-made problems, man-made issues. We are the one causing most of these issues. And yeah, the best way to actually kind of mitigate, because of course, trust me, we can't totally, curb coastal flooding. This is a natural phenomenon that has been happening as a result of our own intervention in the natural system. We can't totally curb it, but yeah, there are things we can do to mitigate the impact on our aquatic resources. Talking about the fact that, yeah, Mr. Boko said we have to do something called the marine special planning. That is, we have a special planning to help put things in place in the marine environment to ensure that even the impact of coastal flooding, when it finally happens, it does not really have significant impact on our resources. Also talking about the fact that we have to manage our rivers well, because of course we all know that from basic knowledge, we all know that the river always ends up back into the ocean, wherever the river starts from upstream. Whenever it reaches downstream, there is always a way that it goes back into the ocean. Management of this river inflow into the ocean also is very important to be able to protect our aquatic resources. And also, like we all know, talking about the fact that several measures and several countries have tried several measures into doing all these things, but at the end of the day, we still boil down to the fact that we as individuals and as a country or as a group need to work ourselves to be able to ensure that this particular incident or this particular impact is being reduced and mitigated to its minimum. Thank you so much, Mr. Bokul, for your time. While you were talking, I received from Mr. Paul. Please talk about the positive impact again. So basically, there is no specific positive impact of coastal flooding, other than the fact that being able to manage the aftermath of this particular event. For example, when I said the other time that coastal flooding, the water goes from the ocean into the offshore to the land. So in a situation whereby we have such an event, there is a possibility to be able to regulate the number of nutrient that comes back with the flood water. So in such a way that the nutrient that is coming back is kind of not overloaded. That's I see it as a positivity already, because at the end of the day, this one way or another gives back to the ocean, and it's boosts the natural development of the flowers or of the flora in the ocean. It is only when it is too much that eutrophication comes in, algal bloom comes in, then that becomes a negative impact rather than a positive impact. So trust me, that was why Mr. Boku said the negative impacts are always the best, or the most, because at the end of the day, nobody wants flooding, no matter how little it is. So because it always have catastrophic impacts. So that's what I can say about the positive impact. There's not so many positive impacts of coastal flooding. At the end of the day, the negative impact always take the lead and always win the race. So that's it about that. And also I noticed that Mr. Bokul also posted the link he mentioned earlier, and of course a little bit of the marine spatial planning he mentioned. So you can read more about this, and you can also go to this link to get more information if you are interested in this particular topic. Without further ado, I would like to say a big thank you to Mr. Bokul for giving us this wonderful talk about coastal flooding. And as well, I would like to say thank you for sharing your idea with us. Thank you for joining us today. And I would like to say thank you for everyone that also participated today. I would like to say thank you for joining us. And of course, trust that we'll be back again next month for our next topic, for our next virtual seminar. And thank you for joining us once again. I thank the moderators. I thank everybody. I thank the organizers of this program, Aqua World in general. I thank everyone for making this work today. And of course, thank you for having us today. And we would like to see you same time, same place next month.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.